Hello everyone. I'm going to try and get through this pretty quick, as fast as possible. I've seen a lot of videos about people making guides and setups in the barn and the docks, which I think is pretty cool, but I watched a couple of them, and maybe there are some out there that do this, but I haven't seen any that really go into the math or the ratio of why you want to do a certain amount of drying racks to a certain amount of plots. So I'm going to go over that real quick for you. Wanted to bring up the discussion and see what you guys think. So, the numbers, right? You have cocoa plants with 0% boosts, and by boosts I mean the air pots, which give a 30% boost, or the lights that also give a 30% boost. So I'm going to go 0, 30, 60. With a 0, it's 9 per harvest, 21 minutes for a harvest, which is 0.4286 per minute. And then with a 30, it's 14.7, which then makes it 0.6122 flowers per minute, and 60% is 8.4 minutes for a harvest for 9 plants, 1.714. Now, the drying racks are 20, right? You can dry 20 at a time, and that takes 12 minutes. So that's 1.6667, plants per minute that you are able to dry. Now, the reason that this is important, and I'll share the spreadsheet. I'll do this for the weed seeds and the cocoa seeds, and I'll also show, in the description, I'll post the numbers so that all of you guys can see that. But basically, what this means for the cocoa plants is that if you have no boost at all, no air pots, just normal pots, no normal lights, no boost, 0%, you're gonna need 3.89 racks per or planters per rack, right? So you're gonna need 4 growing plots for 1 rack. At 30%, that goes to 2.72, and 60% that goes to 1.56. Now, what this looks like in practicality is when I did my cocoa setup, I switched it to a weed. I've been doing a lot of playing around with this. When I had the cocoa setup, I had 28 plots, and then you need 1.5, which would be of 28, it was 18 drying racks. So basically how that basically how that math works out is, I had 28 planters, same as I have here actually. I had 28 planters, and that is 1.714 times 28, basically 30 flowers per plant, and then the drying racks is 1.6667. So I needed 18 drying racks for the 28 planters, and that's exactly what I had. So I'll show you the graph here in the description. You guys can pull it up and look at it with me. Now, for the weed seeds, if you guys have any questions about this, I'm literally just bringing it up for the sake of discussion, not really anything else, just, for you guys, if you guys are as curious as I am. For the weed seeds, if you have no air plots, no lights, no nothing, no boost, it's 2.8 planters per rack. So you would need 2 planters into a rack. 30%, it's 1.46, and then 60%, it's 0.83. Now here's where this gets really interesting, right? And I didn't do this with the cocoa plants because I didn't think of it at the time. But if you find the right amount, you can even it out and try and get as little bottleneck as possible, right? And what I mean by this is what a lot of people do to make sure that they're not getting bottlenecked by their plants, for instance, is they put the plants to the rack, or they put the plants to the storage and then the storage to the racks. Well, what I have here is I have the planters directly into the racks. The reason for that is because if I can get 2 more botanists, which is 8 more planters and 8 more racks, because it's almost a 1-to-1 ratio, the 17% inefficiency that I'm losing, it's a 17% bottleneck, right? I'm actually gaining more from just having 2 botanists than I am getting rid of that 17% bottleneck, right? So it's actually just better. And I just made this, so I don't have a supply yet, right? I've just been playing around with this a bunch. But if you just go directly into these, and then directly from these into these, you don't need handlers. So instead of, because for each drying rack, you'd need to have a handler bring it from the stores to the drying rack. And each one of those is a spot. So if you have, X amount of drying racks, you need, you divide that by 5, and that's how many handlers you need. So you're going to need 2, 3, 4 handlers. But if you do it this way, you'll be at a 17% bottleneck or inefficiency rate. But you can have way more botanists, which makes up for it. So you can do the same thing with the coca plant, or cacao, or coca, or whatever you want to call them. The coca plants and the weed strands. All the weed strands are the same. So it is 12 plants per 15 minutes. And then the coca plants are, and then you scale that by the 30% and the 60%. And then the coca plants are 9 plants in 21 minutes. So, it obviously scales down to, the 30 and 60%. 60% is more than half, which is quite a lot when you actually think about it. But anyways, wanted to bring this discussion up to people. One last thing. What this looks like in practicality, and the reason that I did this is because, I wanted to know how many racks, how many drying racks to how many planters I have. Obviously, if you're trying to min-max like this, and you probably have, the money to spend on 30 or 60%. That being said, if you look at the graph, the easiest margins are, either 1, 2, or 0.5. The 2.72, you'd have to get a weird amount of racks to a weird amount of plants. So to make it easy for you, right, you just say, oh, well, if I have a 0% boost, I need to, if I have no air pots and no lights, and I'm just starting out, I could just put 2 of these into 1 drying rack, because it is 2.08. I don't know about you guys, but if you can save yourself having to get a handler and get a whole nother botanist, I don't really care if I'm losing 0.08% efficiency, right? I mean, that's nothing. So, you can do the same thing with coca. It's 3.89, so you can do 4 coca plants. But, if you're trying to min-max, chances are you're probably going to try and, get the 30% and the 60% with the air pots and the lights and all that fun jazz. So for the 60%, it's 0.83, which is, you'd rather just have more botanists. It's almost a 1-to-1 ratio. So just have these, go each into their own rack. And then, for the coca, it's 1.5. So, 28, you'd want to half that, and then half that again and add that. So, essentially, right? Anyways, I appreciate you guys taking the time to watch the end. Please let me know if you guys have already figured this out or seen this in another YouTube video. How I want to see how they did it. If they're doing, you know, this full 60%, if they're only doing 30%. I know some people are doing the plastic pots, which don't give you the growing bonus. I personally haven't had an issue with my workers being idle, or with them not being idle, you know, too busy. So the reason that you'd want plastic pots is to cut down on their workload. They don't have to fill, you know, they don't have to water the plants. So if they're being overworked, then, you know, you can use plastic pots. They take a little longer to grow, and they don't have to be watered. So if your bottleneck is, you know, your workers working too much and not being able to focus on the racks, then I've seen some people do that. I personally haven't run into that issue. I put, you know, for each worker, I have. I'll show you real quick. My place is a mess. Don't judge me. I have way too much stuff. My ratio is 4 plants and 4 racks, right? So, oh, I just lagged. Same thing, you know, with this guy, for instance. So I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. So they're evened out between racks and plots, and so I haven't had to worry about that bottleneck. So even with the weed strands, even with how fast they grow and how busy the workers are, they still aren't too busy. You know, they still try and walk out sometimes because they don't have anything to do, because, you know, they're just waiting around. So I am curious what other people are doing, though, so let me know what you guys find, what you see elsewhere, and I appreciate you joining in on the discussion.